Let's talk about invoices. Well, in a fun way, maybe. Let's get into it. Alright guys, look, I've been really kind of delaying this one because I don't really understand how to make this as fun as possible. I just came to realize that if I'm going to teach you or give you guys my opinion on budgets, then it's only right that I give you opinions on invoices, because after you budget, after you give an estimate, you have to give an invoice to a customer, right? Kind of like your sample estimate. Once you are done, then you give an invoice as well that says when you have to pay for it, balance remaining, that sort of thing. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how to actually make an invoice. A lot of my students struggle with the business aspect of construction, and the business aspect of anything is always really difficult. Budget is probably one of the biggest ones that I really focus on. You need to know how much things cost. We need to understand how much to charge our customers, right? The customer also needs to understand that too, but they don't need to see your budget and what you get materials for. They need to see something that we call an invoice. This is something that we give to customers so that they know what they're being charged for, what the taxes are, shipping, that sort of thing, who to pay, and everything, what the terms are. And we're going to kind of take a look at a couple sample templates right now. I know you can't see them, but I'm going to tell you a way that you can see them if you want to do this along with me. First things first, let's talk about invoices and what you need, right? To make an invoice from scratch, there's a couple step-by-steps that you need to have, a couple rules. First thing you need on an invoice, some people do this on Word, Docs, some people do this on Excel, Sheets, that sort of thing. There's a bunch of different templates that we're actually going to take a look at today. But if you want to make it from scratch, which I highly recommend you do because it's tailored towards your business, right? The first thing you need is you need to have some sort of header with your business information. At the top of your invoice, list your business information, include the name of your business, right? If you're a freelancer, like you just, Joseph Garibaldi Construction, it might just be your name, right? If I'm just doing construction, the address of your business, your phone number, email address, and a logo if you have one. I strongly recommend to make one or get one. They're not very hard to make, but you can do a couple different things. Okay, next you need to include your client's contact info. Remember, you are keeping a copy of this invoice for your own records, right? So make sure you include your client's contact infos. Make sure you list the correct contact person. It's great to verify, right, before you give them the invoice that if you want them to put, if it's a husband or wife, if you want them to put both phone numbers or just hers or his, whatever, right? List the address, phone number, and email for your point of contact, right? If there's something wrong, that's a person to call for that. It's really a good idea for bigger kind of things. When we move up and do commercial construction, it's a great idea to get a one person of contact instead of doing it for like Best Buy. Maybe have the manager or the person in charge of construction, their contact info so you can get a hold of them. Next, we want to provide some invoice information, right? You should have a number to help you easily keep track. You never want to get rid of your invoices. I think my dad kept his for about 5 years, never really got rid of them. The importance of keeping an invoice is that if that customer comes back, you have prior information about what you sold them and what you did. As things become crazy and hectic and you get more and more jobs, it's important to keep track of the past jobs you did so you can easily sell or help your customer whenever or if they come back. Hopefully you do a good enough job because the goal is for them to come back to you, right? Repeat customers are always the most loyal. They will always tell other people about your services, and that's how you get more customers. Remember, customer service is number one, and a proper invoice leaves a great impression on your customer. So you should have a unique number, right? For your first one, it may just be one, right? And then count up from there. It's probably the easiest one. You probably want to include a date. My dad alphabetized them based on the customer's last name. So if a customer said, my name is John Smith, okay, my dad would go as Smith, find John. Oh, you were my first customer, or you were my 100th customer. This is what we did for you then, right? And this is what we sold you. If they don't have the invoice, right? So some sort of numbering system is super important. That's probably one of the most overlooked ones. Whenever I get invoices from different companies, I never see a number. I'm like, how are you going to remember me? Well, they're not. They're just going to throw their invoice away once they complete their job. So it really kind of makes impact on how you think about that company and maybe how they think about you. Number 4, probably the most important one is to specify your payment terms, right? It's important that your invoice really clearly specifies when and how you expect your clients to pay you. This includes an invoice due date. It's very common among people to use a 30-day billing cycle. So if you issue an invoice on April 1st, the payment is due 30 days later on May 1st. You would also want to include information on how or what payments you accept: check, credit card, PayPal, etc. Also, if you charge late fees, make sure they're clearly outlined on the invoice so they know, right? And the late fee terms on your invoice as well. Before they sign the invoice, you need to make sure your client is solid and has a clear understanding on how and when they're supposed to pay and if there's any late fees. Because if they're taken aback or pissed off about your payment, they're probably not going to pay you, man. My dad, for his first, if the client was new, even if the client was like he had him before, he would still get a deposit or put a deposit down. And at first, that helped buy a lot of his materials, was using customers' deposits and finishing up. Now, the problem was if you use a deposit to buy and they back out or whatever and expect their deposit back, you may not have that deposit. You might have to, pony up some of your own money. So just be careful in how you want to do that. We will do another kind of podcast on starting a business and actually have a few people to interview about that one too. So there's going to be a lot when we talk about starting businesses, and people are going to have their own opinions on it. So don't think that you have to take a deposit. You can just do the work and then take the payment later. It's always harder though. I always recommend you get at least a little bit money from them, because if they don't pay you, then you're out of all this money doing this job. At least get some of your money, right? Some people, it's very common to charge up front for materials, just so at the very least your labor is the only thing that you need payment for, right? But it just depends. So that being said, there's a couple different ways you can get payment, and make sure you're very, very proactive on this. There is nothing that upsets me or a customer more than if they accept a check and you don't cash that freaking check for like 3 months. If you get a check, you better cash it the same or the next day, right? Customers don't want to be waiting on their bank account to be hit with, especially if it's a couple $1,000s, they don't want to be waiting on that bank account to be hit all of a sudden with $1,000 cashed, right? Now, a good way as a customer to kind of counteract this is just go get a cashier's check. I know some banks charge you like $5 for one. If you have a credit union, they don't charge you for a cashier's check, but that way you don't have to really worry about it. The easiest way, and probably the most common way right now, is to use virtual payments like Venmo or PayPal, Cash App. Those sort of things would be the easiest way. As a business person, you should probably look into more professional ways of taking payments. Not saying that, Cash App or Zelle or whatever is professional. I mean, they probably are, but the issue with those sort of apps is the name, right? And sometimes the name rubs people the wrong way. They're going to want something a little bit more professional, streamlined. I take cash, credit, check, card, whatever. PayPal and Venmo are probably the two most recognizable ones. I mean, some people use Cash App and Zelle. I mean, they're few and far in between. Most people know what Venmo and PayPal is, and they have a pretty good name built up for themselves. They're actually the same company, but whatever. That being said, please make sure you are aware of what you're using. If you only use Cash App, the customer is probably not going to want to download a whole new app. So it might be a good idea to have them all, right? It just depends on your customer and how you feel. Probably the safest way is definitely cash. From there, you can move up to maybe credit, PayPal, Venmo. Check is probably me personally, I don't like checks at all. It makes me stress out thinking about the check, having to cash it. And then what if I, have a check that bounces? What am I going to do then? It's not good on the client for sure, but you don't want to take that risk. So get the guarantee. I don't really like checks too much. Okay, next, we want to include an itemized list of services. You want to be as transparent as possible. So include a very much an itemized list of services rendered for the invoice period, right? So you don't want to give anything that like, we need this before we go or whatever. You want to make sure that if you're giving them a list of stuff you need for it's applicable to their job. So some things that you are going to want to put on this table, the easiest way to do it is to make a table or some sort of chart, right? You want to have like the date, the services you're providing. If I'm going to be painting someone's house, I'm going to put the date that I'm going to start, right? I'm also going to put the date that I'm going to buy the materials. So they know that I'm going to Home Depot, I'm going to buy this for this price, buy that for that price, right? Buy paint, whatever. You're also going to want to put the quantity, how much paint they're buying, how many hours your service might take. You want to put the rate, so how much it costs per hour or per unit. If you're buying 2 things of paint and you only put $400, well, I'm going to assume that each can of paint costed $200 or whatever. You want to make sure you include your rate and unit price. You also going to want to include a subtotal as well. So what it costs before taxes. Some people charge their customers a kind of fee for them going out and buying their materials. My dad has always charged a small fee. If he had to go buy the tile, then he would charge a little bit more. It wasn't a whole lot, right? But it took into account the time that he spent going out picking out all the tile for his client. Some people have very mixed opinions about that. You may have very mixed opinions too. I kind of like doing that because it gives the client an opportunity. If they want to go out and buy it, then they can save a little bit of money and do that, right? So it gives them the flexibility. If they want to go, this is all the stuff they need to buy for that job, right? They want to go out and buy it. This is the way they can buy it. I'm still going to charge you for my time and the wear on my tools, but you are more than welcome to go buy your materials. And I always thought that was a very transparent way for business. So I always that's kind of the route that I went. Next, you need to list any taxes that you're going to have to charge them. It's a good idea to research your local tax bureau to find out how much tax you should charge your clients. The good news for services are untaxable. So you don't need to tax a service. It's more like goods that are going to be taxed. So when you go out and buy goods, that sort of thing, there will be some taxes that have to be paid, whether it be sales tax, whatever. So research with your local tax bureau or department and figure out how much taxes you will need. Now, while this next part is not super necessary, it is kind of important. You may want to add a note at the end. And this includes a really friendly thank you message for your clients. It's not only good for your brand, but it's pretty, it's like common courtesy, like a thank you letter, that sort of thing, some sort of note. Because you're going to give an invoice after you're done. You might do one before, invoice them before, but this is when we get a little bit, kind of personal preference. Some people, if the prices are not going to change and you feel pretty confident, you can not really invoice, but give them the estimate before. The very end, you're going to want to give them this invoice that you listed everything, itemized list of services. There is a difference between the pre-invoice or the kind of estimate you gave them versus the end invoice. If I'm doing tile, I probably should have led off this podcast talking about that. If I am doing tile and I look at the job, I'm like, oh yeah, I can redo this whole shower. It's going to cost you $5,000, right? And I give them the invoice, and what if they pay all the $5,000? Well, that's great, but what happens if you remove things and you realize there's way more, there's water damage behind the shower? Well, you can't put a new shower up if there's water damage and the boards are falling off. You can't do that. So, what do? That's why there are some pros and cons of creating an invoice and giving it to them at the end or giving it to them at the beginning. I would personally give them a sample invoice at the beginning and be like, hey, this is what I think it will cost. This is your estimate, right? It goes in hand with their budget, right? Hand in hand, this is what you're going to give them. At the very end, you give them your final invoice. And I would really recommend on that final invoice to write a thank you letter, right? Or a thank you note, right? A simple thank you letter has actually proven to help you get paid faster because they're going to remember you and want to take care of you, hopefully, right? And you want to use your best judgment. If they pick your bid, you want to use your best judgment on these people if you actually want to go on and use or actually do the job for them. Always assume good intentions, but always make sure you guard your company first. That's the most important. Okay, moving on. So I want to look at some sample invoices and kind of take a look at them and how I would rate them. So if you go on to Google and you just type in sample invoice template and type your images, or just go to images, you will see some paid ones up top. Go down. There's the first one you should see. Now, I don't know when you're going to be listening to this, so it might be changed, but I'm pretty confident that it's not. It's pretty much going to be the same. The first one I'm looking at is an orange one. It looks all right. Has a logo. Okay. So on the top left corner, there's your logo, company name, your address, contact details, details. Okay, it says invoice, so they know clearly they're getting an invoice for what's due. There's the date, invoice number. Oh, perfect. Right below that, in kind of small letters, but you can still really see it, is payment terms, and they list their payment terms. Due on receipt or due in X days. Some people charge up front, like I need to get the money right now. Here's the invoice, pay it right now. Or pay in 15 days or pay in 30 days. We all talked about that. Sometimes it's nice just to pay up front. Sometimes it's nice to give them some time, right? It really just kind of depends. Okay, there's bill to. So there's who's going to be billed, like the contact name, and then the client company name. So if you're going with a big company, then you're going to want to make sure you have that contact name and then the company name as well. Address, phone number, email, that sort of thing. If you're going to be shipping something, right, make sure you put a ship to. This one has a ship to as well. So bill and shipping. This is obviously a template, not necessarily for construction, but you can definitely use this one if you're going to be shipping something. Then there are a description. There's a little bit table. It has a description. Okay, what you bought, the quantity, the unit price, and then the total price. So if I'm going to do this for painting, I'm going to put under description paint can or whatever. Quantity 5, unit price $6 per can. So it's $30 total, right? That sort of thing. And I would go all the way down with different services, that sort of stuff. Now, right below the table is a couple things. There is another column where you're going to have our final taxes, and I'll kind of go through that in a minute. The next is a big empty space, and that's where it says remarks/payment instructions. This is perfect. You can put your little thank you note there. You can put how you want to be paid, Venmo, all your information on there as well. Next is you want to do a subtotal. So how much all the sub costs. If you're going to do a discount, you can put your discount there. Then your subtotal less discount. So you would do subtotal discount if you do a discount. Then your subtotal with the discount. Then you want to tax it because discounts are always pre-taxed. Then you want to tax it. You want to put your tax rate so they know what tax rate you are getting charged for. Then your total tax, and then shipping and handling. Then their balance due is at the end. It's always bigger than the other ones. It's always in red or whatever, blue, bolded, that sort of thing. Whatever you have to do. So that's actually a really nice one. I like that one. Moving over, this one's a blue one. This one obviously looks a lot more professional. I kind of like this one a little bit better. So this is a little bit more professional. They have the company name up here. There's not even a logo. That's totally fine. Street address, city, zip, phone number, fax. Ooh, wow. Website. Okay. They have their bill to, so who they're billing. It says invoice at the top. I actually kind of like this one. Then they says date. Okay. Invoice number. Awesome. There's a customer ID. Some places do if they're huge and they have tons and tons of customers. They do a special customer ID. So they, instead of listing them by last name like my dad did, they list them by ID, and that's totally fine. They have a description. There you go. They have a service fee, labor. Okay, so this one has a service fee. So a straight up service fee. It's going to cost $230 for whatever service they're doing. That's the service fee, not taxed. They have labor, which is 5 hours at $75 an hour, and it looks like it is going to be $375. That sounds perfect. And then parts. So they said parts. They have an X saying it's going to be taxed, and $345. Okay. The only thing is, it's not really detailed, but this is a sample, so I guess it doesn't have to be, right? But I have a description, taxed, and amount. The only issue with this one is I like the tax column, but there's no quantity column. So if you need to charge them for 5 bags of bolts, there's no way I can put that. I have to put it in the description, which gets a little messy. Okay, moving down, we have our total column. So this one does it actually a little bit differently. This is probably a little bit more professional. Maybe not professional, but more applicable to mechanics or construction, that sort of thing. They have their subtotal, which is $950 taxable. So they put its own taxable kind of rate. So this would be a taxable is $345. The tax rate is 6.25. Okay. Tax rate due is 21.65, and other is nothing. There's no other. And so it gives you a total tax. Then it says make checks payable to the company name. So they only want checks. Okay, that's fine. I have pest control currently, and they only like checks. I get it. Okay, now other comments. So total payment due in 30 days. Okay, so they gave you 30 days to pay it off. Please include your invoice number on your check. This is an important one as well. If you're going to have a ton of people and ton of work, customers are going to send you checks. Please put their invoice number on said check. Okay, and now if there's any questions about this invoice, please contact name, phone number, email. Thank you for your business. Yada bing, yada boom. There he goes. Actually like that one a lot. I think that one has, I mean, you have to add another column in that, but that one's actually a pretty solid one. This looks even more simple and less usable. Oh, this one looks better. This one's a Stanford Plumbing and Heating invoice. There we go. So it has a bill. It's all the same, really. And it looks really, really nice. I like this one. If you can look at sample invoice template. It's like the fourth one. It says Stanford Plumbing and Heating. I actually really, really, really like this one. I think it looks very solid. Invoice number, date, due date, bill to, all that kind of stuff. Thank you for your business. Gives you all that stuff. Discount, tax rate, yada, yada, yada. The best part is that they have quantity / hour, unit price, and total price. So that is awesome. Yeah, they did that. They installed a new sink, and that one says hours. There's 3 hours. They charge them $150 to install a kitchen sink. Okay. They charged them for the sink, for the filter system, a Nest thermostat. Oh, they do plumbing and heating. Okay, and a Warcaster Green Star. I'm assuming that might be I don't know what that is. That looks like okay, I don't know. Anyways, that's actually a really nice, it's actually a really, really nice one. I actually really like that one. So that's awesome. I would use this one. I think it's really solid. It is Stanford Plumbing and Heating. All right, guys, I hope you enjoy this lesson on invoices. It's so important. Please make sure you invoice your customers so you can get paid. Make sure you get that invoice in. Make sure you get them out in a timely manner as well. I'm looking forward to doing more of these podcasts, but I really wanted to get invoices out of the way so we can talk about business and making some money. All right. I will see you guys in the next episode. Episode 21 is in the books. I will see you guys at 22.
This has been an episode of the Chip Happens podcast. Thank you all for listening, and I will catch you next week with another exciting episode.